Welcome back to Visual Supercharge. Hello, Bart.
Oh, hi, David.
So I think under this giant umbrella of skills, that's such an expansive thing because some skills are directly related to the tools we have, and other skills have to do with our thinking process. So let's spend some time kind of unpacking this because, hello, hybrid form of literacy.
Yeah, as you illustrated here, we'll create kind of like a ladder of skills, right? Like a hierarchy. Yeah. We'll show you the starting point and we'll give you few steps on that ladder. So why don't we use those numbers that I just brought to the canvas here, and we'll begin with something quite fundamental. And what is the most fundamental skill when you think of DVL, David?
I think that the easiest skill for somebody to grasp, the one that's clean and simple, is you tap a couple times and you insert something.
Right.
So we can begin to represent things just by putting them into the canvas.
So that means adding representations, right? And yes, those representations could be drawings or slides or pictures, right? Photos that you take, documents that you scan, whatever like those are.
Like this little man that I just put there.
Okay, great.
He can hardly wait to do more. And these images or representations that we can add at any time, that's a whole world of things that we can think about in advance and be prepared for, or collect or access from other places.
So depend on your software that you're using, you certainly have a button to add existing representations. And for me, this button is just right here. I can add them from my clipboard. And that's what I'm doing with those elements that you see here. I just store them in my clipboard and I'm just taking them from here. But I could also take any document that I have in one of the repositories. So that's adding representations. But I guess, and let me ask you another tricky question, that's not the only way you can represent. What would be the second way?
Well, that would have to be taking the pen.
Oh, yeah.
The draw tool, if you wish, but don't get scared of that word now. Right? This is the manual extension of our hands and our fingers. This is the one we've been using for, roughly thousands of years.
Roughly. Cool. Okay. So these are the basic skills of representing on the board what you need to put to the board, what you need to show to people. So it might be a thought that you have in your head and you're trying just to sketch it out, or it might be a document that you need to talk through.
The only thing I would add is that experientially, we want to acknowledge anyone who's looking at doing this, because that moment when you pick up this tool and you put this pen, whether it's in private or in front of a group of people, to the board, we know that there's a moment of vulnerability where you say to yourself, but I'm not an artist, but I don't know that this is going to look like anything. And that can be a scary moment for a lot of people. And welcome.
It might be scary, but then again, you shouldn't fear that because it creates this situation of being vulnerable, which is in an open conversation much welcomed. And why? Because if you do something imperfect, like hand-drawn element on the board, it invites others to improve that representation. So it actually, it opens for conversation and opens this door for contribution. And that's I guess, what we're looking for, right, David?
Yes. And what goes hand in hand with what you just said, Bart, is that whatever symbol or whatever mark we make, even if it's something as this, whoops, we only need one set of arms and hands. It's going to be understood because our ability to visualize and make sense of patterns is universal. Every single person on the planet is going to read that as human being. So you don't need to be afraid of somebody not understanding what you're saying. We can all draw the basic shapes. We can draw circles. We can draw triangles. We can draw squares. We can draw lines. We can make things more colorful. That's goodness in terms of providing that bridge with which to walk across and visualize and share and communicate more clearly with people.
Okay. So let me now clear our board a little bit. Okay. So we're speaking of skills.
Did everybody see that these two guys right here?
Yep.
You just flipped them around. It's the same image, just flipped like within 2 seconds.
Yep.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
It is. So by that, you introduce a bit of joy to the conversation. And imagine how this could break the ice, right? When you're starting a conversation with some strangers on the other end of the world, it really helps.
Yes. And it can become a fun game, not necessarily a competitive game, but a game of discovery and exploration, is to see how we can build on and add to each other's picture or page for whatever it is we're trying to build with people.
Yeah.
Okay.
So far, David, I think we have the skills of representing covered. So what's the step up?
I would say it would be a level where there's a cluster of skills, 2 or 3, that involve moving objects or moving around in our canvas.
So moving objects, it's something that we can do using the hand tool. So when I'm moving this object, that's exactly what I'm using, the hand tool. And the hand
tool is that icon with the finger pointing.
Exactly. But you also mentioned moving around the canvas. Why don't we show this big picture by moving out to display the entire model that we're building?
So that's an example of moving out. Okay. But now let's go the opposite direction and move in to reveal any kind of detail that I want to show in detail.
Yeah.
Hello. That is moving to the max. It's really unlimited. And that's why when we say, are we on the same page or sharing the same canvas, we're talking about a very concrete, very tangible experience that's far more concrete and tangible than when we're just using words and gesticulating, because we can go back to that model, back to that canvas, and there it is. And we can literally move around in it. And it's a permanent record if we want it, but it's so much more workable.
And I want to point your attention to one specific difference. When you're using a regular board, you can only use this way of representing ideas. You can only draw them. You cannot reposition them. You cannot change the focus as we just demonstrated. And you cannot, for the love of God, add any existing materials to it, unless you print and pin them to the board, right?
It's hard for people to understand how much flexibility and capability we have in this digital world to move around, other than just to try it, to apply it to situations and to challenge yourself to do things in a new way. I mean, how could you know if you don't immerse yourself, pick up a pen, tap on the tools, and physically have that experience.
Yeah, let's continue. So what would be the next level number 3?
Well, this one wouldn't be so obvious, and that is because we're dealing with all kinds of images and groups of images. And I would say this next level of skill is the ability to put objects in a group and ungroup them, and then move things in and out of groups if we need to.
That's quite useful. So, for example, here we have those elements are separate, right? We can go ahead and group them. So instead of using them separately, as I do now with my 3 fingers, we can move them together. And for that, all we need to do is to select them and group them like that. So now we can move them as a group. As simple as that.
Yes, or make them larger, right?
Yeah.
Or twirl them around if we want to.
If you like it, yeah. Yeah. So that's essential skill, actually. When you're using more objects than just a few on the board and you want to reposition, yeah, I agree. This is very important. Cool. Okay. And I guess in order to complete the list of basic skills, we need just one more. Would you agree? Something that is quite fundamental and we yet failed to mention about it.
Well, we haven't failed. It's just, let's just say, for instance, that we're going to explore an idea and we're going to design something, on our own, right? We're going to design the front of a house.
Okay.
Nice one.
And
we get our house to looking pretty good, and we think, oh, I really want to share that with my boss or my coworker, and what do? How do I send it to them? So the whole process of sharing and accessing what we've just created is a skill, and it's a powerful skill because we can bring other people in on our design, and we can then invite people to collaborate with us really easily.
Great. Okay. And this concludes the list of our basic skills. So we designed them around this concept of 4 steps that you can use to prepare yourself for visual collaboration.
And we shouldn't take it for granted that if somebody has these basic skills, they're going to be able to do amazing things that we wouldn't even think about in a normal world. That just the basics. And I think that in our talking about the advanced skills, we're only just going to cover a few, right?
Okay.
I think that once we've got our basic representations in or on the canvas, then it's going to cross our mind that, well, what if we want to modify something? What if we want to fill it in? What if we want to do a little bit more with it or get rid of it?
Okay. So that means refinement, right?
It does. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And we have, things like eraser tools that can help refine something.
Or we have the tools to fill objects with color, right? So there are many ways you can refine your representations. And we obviously don't want to go into too much detail because those tools vary from whiteboard to whiteboard. But just to give you a sense that this is a communication tool with graphical capabilities that you can use for your advantage when you're representing or you're modifying existing representations. So can you tell us some more how we can deal with the complexity if you have a lot of things on your board?
Well, it doesn't take too long, as anyone can see here, for us to have many elements, right? And if there are 2 or 3 people contributing to a canvas, then what we want to do is represent yet another level of skill that begins to kick in necessarily with being able to focus in multiple places at the same time. So you're looking at the images, you're looking at the tools, you're watching what people are doing. So you have to have sort of a multi-point ability to focus, or a multi-point focus. So this multi-point awareness isn't a tool per se, but it is a skill that starts to emerge. And you need to think in terms of moving your eye around and recognizing patterns and developing almost a reflex. But it never gets completely automatic because there's just too much that you have to pay attention to. But all that's good, all that's richness is really what it amounts to.
So in other words, we cannot tell you exactly how long it can take you to go from the decision of investing into DVL, the visual skills of communication, to the moment where you'll have this ability moving back and forth, changing the perspectives of people, and fluently using these skills, right? We cannot tell you, but at least we hope we could inform you what are the steps ahead and how to progress.
Yes. And that sense of confidence or fluency, as you just said, that's going to come with practice and with realizing that, this is a mindset and there's nothing limiting me except the amount of effort and trying things.
This mindset that you mentioned is most important here. You need to stay open-minded and allow yourself to try new things in many of the situations that we'll cover in the course. So we invite you to continue with us and, yes, try new things as you go.
Absolutely.